Section 1. Hey guys. Tonight we slip into the glittering halls of the Winter Palace, where you sit at a sprawling banquet table under chandeliers that flicker like 1,000 fireflies. Still, the plates piled high with strange Russian dishes make you wonder if you'll survive the meal. You're surrounded by nobles in velvet coats, their eyes darting nervously as they await Catherine the Great's next move. Each dish a potential test of loyalty or a culinary trap. Honestly, with food this bizarre, you probably won't survive this feast without a strong stomach. Bear meat soup isn't exactly on your local takeout menu. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your location and local time. I'd love to know who's drifting off with me from across the globe. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You settle into a cushioned chair at the edge of Catherine's grand dining hall, the Winter Palace's golden walls glowing in the candlelight. But the air carries a heavy mix of roasted meats, spiced wine, and something faintly sour, like bread left too long in the kitchen. The table stretches endlessly before you, a battlefield of porcelain and silver, each plate heaped with dishes you can't quite name. There's a steaming bowl of borscht, its beet red hue almost too vibrant, next to a platter of glistening bear meat, sliced thin but looking suspiciously tough. You blink, trying to imagine chewing that without breaking a tooth, and notice the courtiers around you, their faces a mix of forced delight and mild panic as they navigate the Queen's eclectic menu. This is St. Petersburg in the 1760s, where Catherine the Great, who seized the Russian throne in 1762 as a mainstream historical fact, turned dining into a spectacle of power, pleasure, and occasional confusion. As you glance down the table, you catch the faint clink of silver spoons against bowls, the soft murmur of nobles trying to impress without spilling soup on their lace cuffs. The Winter Palace, Catherine's glittering stage, housed thousands of courtiers, servants, and hangers-on, all gathered to eat, scheme, and survive her feasts. But beneath the grandeur, there's a quirky truth. The food here wasn't just sustenance, it was theatre. One odd tidbit whispers through history. Catherine once served a whole roasted peacock, feathers reattached for drama, only for guests to discover it was tougher than old boots. You smirk at the thought. Imagine hyping up a dish only to need a hacksaw to cut it. Light joke number 1. If Catherine's kitchen were a cooking show, it'd be called Extreme Eats Royal Edition, with a side of dental insurance required. You lean closer to your plate, catching a whiff of dill and sour cream, staples of Russian cuisine, but also something stranger, maybe fermented mare's milk, a nod to the steppe nomads Catherine courted for alliances. The smell is bold, like a punch you didn't see coming, and you wonder how anyone kept a straight face while eating this. Historians still argue whether Catherine's lavish feasts were a genuine love for food or a calculated move to dazzle foreign envoys and keep her nobles distracted from plotting. Either way, the table was her chessboard, each dish a pawn in her game of control. You notice a noble across from you, delicately sipping a broth, his eyes fixed on Catherine at the head of the table, where she presides like a culinary goddess, her fork poised as if it could sign treaties or start wars. The sensory overload hits you now. Candles drip wax onto the tablecloth, their smoky scent mingling with the tang of pickled cabbage and the sweet warmth of honeyed pastries. You imagine modern you lasting about 10 minutes before Googling nearest pizza delivery. But back then, this was high art. Catherine's court, as a mainstream fact, was a melting pot of European and Russian traditions, with French chefs hired to elevate rustic dishes into something fit for a queen who read Voltaire by day and ruled an empire by night. Yet, that quirky peacock story lingers in your mind, a reminder that not every dish was a winner. Some guests reportedly hid tough bits under their napkins, hoping Catherine wouldn't notice their culinary treason. Light joke 2. If you didn't finish her bear stew, you might end up exiled to Siberia, or at least stuck washing dishes in the scullery. You let your gaze drift to the ornate ceiling, painted with cherubs who seem to smirk at the dining chaos below. The palace hums with activity. Servants dart in with fresh platters, their faces flushed from the kitchen's heat, while musicians in the corner pluck lutes to mask awkward chewing sounds. It's a sleepy kind of chaos, lulling you into a haze where every bite feels like a diplomatic mission. The food wasn't just about taste, it was about status. A noble who got served the choicest cut of venison knew they were in favor, while the guy stuck with a bowl of lukewarm kasha might as well start packing for the provinces. You chuckle softly, picturing a modern equivalent. Imagine your boss handing you a soggy sandwich while your rival gets prime rib. Light joke 3. Catherine's feasts were the original corporate ladder, just with more spoons and fewer PowerPoint slides. As you sink deeper into the scene, the fan's hum back home blends with the imagined clatter of plates, pulling you toward a drowsy calm. The Winter Palace's feasts were less about nourishment and more about endurance, a test of who could stomach the oddities and smile through the excess. Catherine, with her German roots and Russian ambition, crafted these meals to reflect her empire's vastness, from Siberian game to Black Sea caviar. You feel the weight of the moment, the way each dish carried a story of conquest, of culture, of a queen who knew how to keep her court fed and just a little bit nervous. The banquet hall fades into a soft blur, your eyelids growing heavy as you drift toward the next chapter of Catherine's culinary reign, where her tastes take center stage. Section 2. You're still seated at the grand banquet table in the Winter Palace, the candlelight casting soft shadows across the embroidered tablecloth. But now your eyes are fixed on Catherine herself, presiding at the head like a culinary commander, her spoon dipping into a steaming bowl of borscht with a relish that makes you question her taste buds. The air is thick with the scent of dill, roasted game, and something sweeter, maybe honey cakes stacked like tiny fortresses on a nearby platter. You're trying to keep up, but the sheer volume of food feels like a challenge you weren't trained for. Catherine's appetite is legendary, and as you watch her savor each bite, you realize her love for hearty soups and sugary confections shapes every meal in this glittering chaos. You lean forward, curious, wondering if you dare try her favorite dishes or just stick to bread to play it safe. The Winter Palace dining hall hums with quiet tension, nobles chewing carefully as if each bite is a diplomatic statement. Catherine, who ruled Russia from 1762 to 1796 as a mainstream historical fact, turned meals into a showcase of her power, blending German precision with Russian excess. Her table groans under the weight of dishes, rich cabbage soups, smoked sturgeon, and pastries so sweet they'd make your dentist wince. You notice her spoon lingering over a bowl of uka, a fish broth she reportedly adored, its surface shimmering with a slick of oil that catches the candlelight. A quirky tidbit floats through the court's gossip. Catherine once demanded a soup made from 12 different fish, claiming it boosted her stamina for late-night letter writing. You smirk at the thought. Imagine boiling half the Baltic Sea just to stay awake for paperwork. Light joke 1. If Catherine's soups were a workout plan, you'd need a gym membership just to lift the ladle. You glance at the noble next to you, delicately picking at a slice of venison, his face betraying a mix of awe and mild terror as he eyes a dish of jellied elk tongue. Catherine's love for bold flavors sets the tone, and no one dares complain, not when the Empress herself is piling her plate with pickled mushrooms and sugared plums. You imagine her childhood in Prussia, where simpler fare like sauerkraut shaped her palate, now unleashed on a court that's half starstruck, half stuffed. Her sweet tooth is no secret. Servants whisper of her sneaking marzipan between council meetings, crumbs dusting her quill as she signs decrees. You chuckle softly, picturing her hiding candy like a kid dodging bedtime. Light joke 2. If Catherine's desk had a snack drawer, it'd be a fortress of sugar guarded by bears. The table's sensory overload pulls you deeper into the scene, the clink of goblets and the faint crackle of candle wicks blending with the hum of your fan back home. Historians still argue whether Catherine's lavish menus were a genuine passion for food or a strategic flex to impress allies and intimidate rivals. Her feasts, often lasting hours, were diplomatic marathons, with every dish signaling Russia's wealth and reach. You notice a servant refilling her glass with kvass, a fermented rye drink that smells like bread left out in the rain. It's not your cup of tea, but Catherine sips it like it's fine wine, her eyes scanning the room for any noble who dares look unimpressed. The court's dining habits mirror her own, a silent agreement to embrace her tastes, no matter how strange. You wonder how many courtiers faked enthusiasm for ox tongue just to stay in her good graces. As you take in the scene, the sheer excess feels almost hypnotic, lulling you into a drowsy haze. The tablecloth, heavy with gold thread, seems to glow under the flickering light, but you can't help noticing the faint stains where wine has spilled or gravy has dripped. Nobody mentions it, of course. Catherine's court is too busy performing loyalty to point out imperfections. You imagine a modern you at this table, scrolling through a food delivery app, desperate for something familiar like pizza. Light joke 3. If you time traveled to Catherine's feast, you'd probably smuggle a burger in your pocket and pray nobody noticed the ketchup stains. The food keeps coming. Platters of smoked salmon and dumplings stuffed with mysterious meats, each one a testament to Catherine's empire. From the Baltic to the Black Sea, you feel the weight of the meal settling over you, not just in your stomach, but in your mind, as if each bite carries a story of conquest or compromise. The Empress's appetite isn't just personal, it's political. A noble who refuses her favorite cherry compote might find himself reassigned to a snowy outpost by morning. You picture her smiling, her fork poised over a slice of honey-drenched cake, knowing every guest is watching, weighing their next move. It's a sleepy kind of power, one that wraps you in warmth and excess until you're too full to question it. Your eyelids grow heavy as the banquet hall blurs, the scents of dill and sugar blending into a comforting fog. Catherine's love for food isn't just about flavor. It's about control, a way to keep her court fed, dazzled, and just a little bit nervous. You can almost taste the borscht now, its earthy warmth pulling you deeper into the story. The nobles around you chew in unison, their faces a mix of exhaustion and admiration, while servants slip in with yet another course. The Winter Palace's dining rituals are a dance, and Catherine leads with every spoonful, her appetite setting the rhythm for a court that eats to survive, not just to savor. You drift, ready to sink into the next layer of this culinary saga, where the table itself becomes a stage for her rule. Section 3. You're still at the Winter Palace's grand banquet table, the air thick with the scent of roasted game and warm bread. But now your attention shifts to the flurry of servants weaving through the hall, their arms laden with gilded plates and peculiar utensils that look more like royal relics than dinnerware. You watch, half-dazed, as they arrange the table with military precision, each fork and goblet placed just so, as if a misaligned spoon could spark a diplomatic crisis. The chandeliers above cast a golden glow, but the real drama unfolds in the meticulous setup, a nightly ritual that turns Catherine's feasts into a spectacle of order and excess. You lean back, the soft hum of your fan blending with the clatter of silver, wondering if you'd ever master the art of eating with a fork shaped like a tiny scepter. The table before you is a masterpiece of orchestrated chaos, a sprawling canvas of embroidered linens and gleaming porcelain that screams wealth but hides 1,000 tiny stresses. Catherine, who transformed Russia's court into a cultural powerhouse after her 1762 coup, demanded her dining hall reflect her empire's grandeur, a mainstream historical fact that made every meal a political statement. Servants scurry, adjusting napkins folded into swan shapes and setting out bowls of pickled plums that glint like rubies. You catch a quirky tidbit from court gossip. Catherine once insisted on using a golden spoon carved with her initials for every soup course, believing it added regal flavor to her broth. You stifle a chuckle. Imagine thinking your initials could make cabbage soup taste better. Light joke 1. If Catherine's spoons were on eBay today, they'd come with a taste-like power guarantee and $1 million starting bid. You notice the servants' faces, flushed and focused, as they balance trays of steaming dumplings and crystal decanters of spiced wine. Each place setting is a puzzle, with knives for fish, forks for fowl, and a bizarre contraption you're pretty sure is for cracking quail eggs. The tablecloth, heavy with gold embroidery, shimmers under the candlelight, but you spot faint stains where someone's enthusiasm for gravy got the better of them. It's a reminder that this opulence is fragile, a performance that could unravel if a servant drops a platter or places a goblet an inch too far left. You imagine modern you at this table, fumbling with a 3-pronged fork and praying you don't knock over Catherine's favorite crystal. Light joke 2. If you messed up her table setup, you'd be reassigned to peeling potatoes in a Siberian cellar by dawn. The sensory overload wraps you in a sleepy haze, the clink of silver and the faint crackle of candles pulling you deeper into the scene. Historians still argue whether Catherine's obsession with elaborate table settings was a genuine love for aesthetics or a way to keep her court too busy navigating utensils to plot against her. Either way, the setup was a nightly ritual, as much a part of her rule as signing decrees. You watch a servant adjust a candelabra, its wax dripping onto a cloth already marked by yesterday's feast. The dining hall feels alive, a theatre where every plate tells a story of power, from the caviar reserved for favourites to the plain rye bread served to those on Catherine's bad side. You can almost feel the weight of the silver in your hand, its cool surface a contrast to the warm air thick with dill and smoke. As you sink further into the chair, the palace's rhythm lulls you, like a lullaby made of clinking glass and rustling silk. The servants move like dancers, their steps silent but deliberate, ensuring no noble goes without a perfectly placed napkin. You notice one peculiar utensil, a tiny silver scoop for scooping out marrow from bones, a delicacy Catherine loved, but you're not sure you'd touch. It's a quirky detail that makes you wonder about her palate, a mix of Russian heartiness and European refinement. You picture her inspecting the table, her sharp eyes catching every detail, from the alignment of forks to the sheen on the plates. The mainstream fact of her reign's cultural reforms shines here. She imported French chefs and German etiquette to elevate her court. But the Russian soul of her feasts remained untamed. Your mind drifts, the fans hum blending with the imagined chatter of the hall. The servants' work is relentless, yet invisible, their hands arranging opulence, while their dinners are likely cold porridge in a back room. You smirk at the thought of modern catering crews trying to keep up with this. Catering apps would crash under the weight of Catherine's demands. Light joke 3. If Catherine ran a restaurant today, the Yelp reviews would be 5 stars for drama, but 1 star for too many forks. The table's glow feels warmer now, pulling you toward a drowsy calm. Each setting is a silent command from the Empress, a reminder that in her court, even a misplaced knife could shift the balance of favor. You feel the weight of the meal ahead, not just in the food, but in the expectations, as the banquet hall prepares to become a stage for Catherine's culinary rule. Section 4. You remain fixed at the Winter Palace banquet table, the gilded plates now overflowing with an array of dishes that make your eyes widen in disbelief. From tropical fruits shipped across frozen tundras to slabs of bear meat roasted to a dubious perfection. The candlelight dances over the spread, casting shadows that turn a pineapple into a spiky crown. But you can't shake the puzzle of Catherine's menu, a wild mix that defies all culinary logic and leaves you questioning if this is dinner or a daring experiment. The air hums with the scent of charred game and citrus zest, pulling you deeper into the Empress's eccentric world where every bite is an adventure you didn't sign up for. You hesitate over a forkful of something unidentifiable, wondering if you'd survive her choices or politely push it aside. The table before you is a chaotic tapestry of flavors, a testament to Catherine's empire spanning continents and climates. Exotic fruits like pineapples and oranges, rarities in snowy Russia, sit proudly beside hearty slabs of bear meat, their juices mingling on the platter in a sticky alliance. You imagine biting into the bear, its gamey toughness fighting back, while the fruit offers a sweet escape that feels out of place in this northern palace. Catherine, who expanded Russia's borders through conquests like the annexation of Crimea in 1783 as a mainstream historical fact, mirrored her territorial ambitions in her meals, importing delicacies from afar to flaunt her global reach. A quirky tidbit from her court diaries reveals she once served ostrich eggs scrambled with caviar, claiming it symbolized her unbreakable rule. You grin at the absurdity. Imagine cracking an egg bigger than your head just to make a point. Light joke 1. If Catherine's ostrich eggs were a breakfast trend today, brunch spots would need zookeepers on staff. You scan the spread, spotting pomegranates from the south, their seeds bursting like tiny jewels, next to venison pies stuffed with unknown herbs that smell faintly medicinal. The bear meat dominates, dark and imposing, a staple from Siberian hunts that Catherine adored for its wild strength. You picture her spearing a piece with glee, her courtiers forced to follow suit, their faces masking the chew marathon ahead. Nobles whisper of menus that leap from sweet to savory without warning, like following a honeyed pear with salted herring. You wonder how stomachs held up in an era without antacids, the excess a badge of loyalty. Light joke 2. If you complained about the menu, Catherine might exile you to a diet of plain porridge, calling it character building. The sensory whirlwind envelops you, the crackle of roasting fat and the pop of fruit skins blending into a drowsy symphony. Historians still argue whether Catherine's odd food pairings were a reflection of her enlightened curiosity, or a deliberate tactic to unsettle guests and assert dominance. Her feasts, often featuring imports via treacherous trade routes, showcased Russia's growing influence, but the logic escaped many. You notice a servant carving a whole swan, its feathers reattached for show, the meat inside laced with exotic spices that make your nose twitch. It's a dish fit for fairy tales, yet you can't help thinking of the logistics, shipping fruit through blizzards just for one meal. The table's bounty feels hypnotic, each odd choice pulling you into a relaxed haze where questions fade into acceptance. As you drift in the scene, the palace's rhythm soothes like a gentle lullaby, the clink of knives against plates echoing softly. Catherine's menu isn't just food, it's a statement, blending the familiar rye breads of her adopted homeland with Persian dates and Turkish delights she sampled during diplomatic overtures. You imagine modern fusion restaurants taking notes, but cringing at the bear meat tacos. Light joke 3. If Catherine hosted a cooking competition, the secret ingredient would always be surprise. With judges voting by survival rate, your mind wanders to the courtiers, some eagerly devouring the exotics to curry favor, others poking at their plates like it's a riddle. The fruits, vibrant and juicy, offer relief from the heavy meats, but their arrival in winter feels miraculous, a testament to Catherine's will. You feel the warmth of the hall settling over you, the sense of citrus and smoke creating a comforting fog. The Empress's choices puzzle yet intrigue, a menu that defies seasons and scents, much like her rule. Exotic and bold, it keeps everyone guessing, stomachs full and loyalties tested. You sink deeper, the banquet's oddities lulling you toward the next ritual, where etiquette turns eating into an art of survival. Section 5. You linger at the Winter Palace banquet table, the odd dishes still steaming before you. But now your focus sharpens on the nobles around you, their forks moving in deliberate slow motion as they mimic Catherine's measured chewing, transforming the meal into a hushed performance where every swallow feels like a scripted act. The candlelight flickers across their faces, casting elongated shadows that make the scene feel like a living painting. But the silence, broken only by the occasional clink of silver adds a layer of tension you can almost taste. You try to match their pace, chewing a bite of venison as if it's a state secret. wondering if this etiquette is elegance or just exhaustion in disguise. The air carries the lingering zest of citrus and the earthy depth of stewed meats, lulling you into the Empress's world of controlled indulgence. The dining hall pulses with restrained energy, courtiers glancing at Catherine for cues on when to sip or swallow. Catherine, who enlightened Russia's laws with reforms inspired by European philosophers like Montesquieu, enforced a courtly dining code that blended formality with her whims, a mainstream historical fact that kept meals as structured as her audiences. Nobles chew slowly, jaws working in unison like a well-rehearsed orchestra, their eyes fixed on plates to avoid any faux pas. You notice one lady delicately dabbing her lips with a napkin after each bite, her movements mirroring the Empress's precise elegance. A quirky tidbit from palace memoirs. Catherine once paused mid-meal to lecture a noble on chewing 32 times per bite, claiming it aided digestion and refined the soul. You smile inwardly. Imagine counting chews while plotting your next promotion. Light joke 1. If Catherine's chewing rule were law today, fast food joints would go bankrupt from all the timeouts. You observe the silent ballet unfolding, forks hovering before descending like cautious diplomats. The etiquette demands no slurping, no reaching across the table, and certainly no second helpings without Catherine's nod. You imagine fumbling this, your fork scraping too loudly, drawing stares that could freeze vodka. Courtiers practice in private, mimicking her slow, deliberate style to stay in favor, turning feasts into tests of patience. Light joke 2. If you chewed too fast in her court, you might be accused of rushing to treason. One hasty bite at a time, the sensory hush envelops you. The soft scrape of knives and the faint pop of corks blending into a drowsy rhythm. Historians still argue whether Catherine's strict eating etiquette was a genuine pursuit of refinement or a subtle tool to observe and control her nobles' behaviors during vulnerable moments. Her meals, lasting hours, allowed her to gauge loyalties through subtle cues like who mimicked her perfectly versus who dared deviate. You watch a noble mirror her sip of wine, his throat bobbing in sync, the performance flawless but faintly ridiculous. The table's silence amplifies every sound, from the crunch of a crust to the swallow of soup, creating an atmosphere thick with unspoken rules. You feel the pull of it, your chewing slowing as if by osmosis, the ritual wrapping you in a comforting fog. As you sink deeper into the scene, the palace's quiet cadence soothes like a whispered lullaby, the candle flames dancing lazily. Catherine leads with grace, her fork pausing mid-air for emphasis, courtiers freezing until she resumes. It's a dance of deference, where slow chewing becomes a sign of respect, a way to extend the meal and prolong her command. You picture modern dinner parties adopting this. Awkward silences stretched to infinity, guests counting bites instead of calories. Light joke 3. If Catherine hosted Thanksgiving, the turkey would go cold before anyone finished their first slice. Your mind drifts, the fans hum merging with the imagined hush of the hall. The etiquette isn't just manners, it's survival, a code that weeds out the clumsy from the cunning. Nobles who master it rise, their slow, deliberate bites earning nods from the Empress, while fumblers fade into the background. You sense the exhaustion beneath the poise, cheeks aching from prolonged chewing. stomachs growling for release. Yet the performance continues, a silent tribute to Catherine's rule, where even eating bends to her will. The banquet hall feels warmer now, the sense of food fading into a gentle blur. You relax, ready to slip into the underbelly of this world, where the kitchens pulse with the real chaos fueling these refined displays. Section 6. You slip away from the Winter Palace banquet table in your mind, the grand hall fading as you descend a narrow staircase into the underbelly of the palace, where the kitchens pulse with a chaotic energy that fuels the endless feasts above. The air grows thicker, hotter, laced with the sharp sting of smoke and the sizzle of fats on open flames. But you navigate the steamy haze, glimpsing servants bent over massive pots, their faces glistening with sweat as they stir soups that could feed armies. The clamor hits you like a wave, pots clanging, knives chopping, and voices barking orders in a mix of Russian and French, turning this hidden realm into a sweaty symphony of creation. You pause in the doorway, the heat wrapping around you like a heavy blanket, wondering if you'd last a shift down here or bolt back to the refined chaos upstairs. The kitchens sprawl like a labyrinth beneath the palace. Vast rooms filled with roaring fires and long wooden tables scarred from years of frantic preparation. Catherine, who hosted up to 2,000 guests at her grand balls as a mainstream historical fact, relied on this underground hive to produce miracles of excess, from delicate pastries to hearty stews that kept her court satiated and subdued. You watch a cook heft a cauldron of borscht, its beet red contents bubbling like lava, while apprentices chop onions with tear-stained eyes. The smoke curls upward, carrying scents of garlic, dill, and roasting meats that mingle into an overwhelming fog. A quirky tidbit from servant logs. Catherine once sent back a pie for being too symmetric, demanding the crust be reshaped to mimic the curves of the Neva River. You grin at the whimsy. Imagine measuring pastry with a map. Light joke 1. If Catherine's Kitchen were a reality TV show, it'd be Chopped Imperial Edition, with the loser exiled to peel turnips forever. You weave through the bustle, dodging a boy carrying a tray of raw fowl, his arms trembling under the weight. The heat from the ovens radiates like a furnace, making your imagined skin prickle, while sweat-soaked aprons flap like flags in the rush. Servants shout for more wood, more spices, their voices echoing off stone walls blackened by years of soot. You spot a massive spit turning a whole ox, its juices dripping into a pan below, the sizzle a constant underscore to the frenzy. The chaos is organized in its mad way, sections for baking, boiling, and butchering, each ruled by a head cook who barks like a sergeant. You imagine modern you down here, fumbling with a ladle and burning everything in sight. Light joke 2. If you volunteered in Catherine's kitchen, you'd probably turn her prized caviar into fishy scrambled eggs by accident. The sensory assault lulls you into a drowsy trance. The rhythmic chop of knives and the pop of boiling water blending with your fan's hum back home. Historians still argue whether Catherine's demanding kitchen routines were a sign of her micromanaging style or a necessity to maintain the palace's opulent image amid Russia's harsh winters. Supplies arrive by sleigh from distant farms, often frozen solid, requiring teams to thaw meats over open flames. You notice a corner where bakers knead dough for honey cakes, their hands dusted white with flour, the sweet scent cutting through the savory haze like a brief respite. The smoke thickens near the hearths, where pots of mulled wine simmer, spices floating like islands in a crimson sea. It's a world of contrasts, the elegance above born from this gritty toil, servants laboring through the night to ensure no feast falls short. As you delve deeper, the palace's pulse feels alive down here, a hidden heart beating to Catherine's whims. The cooks experiment with her odd requests, like stuffing quail with exotic nuts imported from the Ottoman border, their faces etched with fatigue but pride. You feel the heat seeping into your bones, a comforting warmth that blurs the edges of wakefulness. The quirky river pie story lingers, a reminder of how her caprices trickle down, turning simple tasks into artistic ordeals. You picture a pastry chef squinting at a map, ruler in hand, shaping dough to her geographic fancy. Light joke 3. If Catherine critiqued your baking, she'd probably say your cookies lacked imperial ambition and send you back to the drawing board. Your thoughts drift in the steamy air, the clamour softening into a soothing backdrop. The kitchens aren't just functional. They're a microcosm of her empire, diverse hands from across Russia and Europe working in unison, their sweat the unseen ingredient in every dish. You sense the exhaustion, shifts stretching into dawn, bodies aching from lifting and stirring, yet the output is flawless. Platters ascending to dazzle the court. The smoke curls around you like a gentle fog, pulling you toward a relaxed haze. Catherine's feasts depend on this chaos, the smoky, sweaty engine that powers her displays of abundance. You relax, the heat fading into comfort, ready to ascend back to the table where the fruits of this labor await, but with a newfound appreciation for the hidden frenzy below. Section 7. You ascend from the smoky kitchens back to the Winter Palace banquet table, the heat still clinging to your skin like a fading memory. But now the focus shifts to the glittering array of sweets that dominate the end of the meal. Pastries piled high and dusted with sugar that sparkle under the candlelight like fresh snow. The air sweetens with the scent of honey and almond, but you sense the hidden risk in every bite. Catherine's love for these confections causing silent toothaches she conceals behind her composed smile. You eye a tray of marzipan fruits, shaped like tiny oranges and pears, their sugary glaze tempting but treacherous, wondering if you'd indulge or wisely abstain in this world of royal excess. The hall's glow softens, the clink of dessert spoons pulling you into the Empress's sugary domain, where pleasure and pain dance a delicate waltz. The banquet winds down into its sweetest phase, nobles reaching for delicate treats that crown the feast like jewels on a scepter. Catherine, who corresponded with philosophers like Diderot to shape her enlightened policies, indulged her sweet tooth with abandon, a mainstream historical fact that saw her consuming pounds of confections weekly amid her reforms. You watch her select a honey cake, its layers oozing with nuts and syrup, her bite measured but eager, the sugar crystals catching the light on her lips. Servants circulate trays of candied violets and chocolate dainties imported from Vienna, each one a burst of sweetness that masks the toll on teeth already worn from years of such delights. A quirky tidbit from her letters. Catherine once joked that her pastries were the true crown of Russia, but privately complained of aches that kept her up nights, blaming the cold rather than the candy. You smile at the irony. Imagine ruling an empire while nursing a sugar-induced throb. Light joke 1. If Catherine's sweets were currency, her court would be bankrupt from cavities alone. You observe the courtiers following suit, their smiles fixed as they nibble on sugared plums. But you catch the subtle wince in a lady's expression, her hand briefly touching her cheek. The pastries are masterpieces, flaky dough wrapped around fruit preserves, dusted with powdered sugar that dusts moustaches and lace collars alike. You imagine the crunch giving way to sticky sweetness, a momentary bliss followed by the dull ache that builds like a storm on the horizon. Catherine hides it masterfully, her regal smile unwavering, even as she sips tea to soothe the sting. You chuckle at the thought of modern remedies absent here. No ibuprofen, just more wine to numb the pain. Light joke 2. If you suggested flossing to a noble, they'd probably think you meant embroidering their napkin. The sensory indulgence wraps you in a cozy haze, the soft crumble of pastry and the faint sigh of contentment blending into a drowsy melody. Historians still argue whether Catherine's excessive sweets were a harmless vice or a subtle rebellion against her austere Prussian upbringing, perhaps fueling her energy for late-night decrees. Her smile remains the shield, broad and commanding, concealing the twinges that plague her after every feast. You notice servants offering mint leaves as a discreet palate cleanser, their fresh bite a brief respite from the sugar's assault. The pastries dominate, towers of cream-filled eclairs and nut-studded biscuits, each one a testament to the baker's skill, but a trial for enamel. The air thickens with vanilla and caramel notes, pulling you deeper into relaxation, the candle flames blurring as fatigue sets in. As you drift in the scene, the palace's rhythm eases like a slowing waltz, the clatter of spoons softening. Catherine's love for sweets isn't just gluttony, it's a statement of abundance, a way to dazzle allies with Russia's wealth while indulging her tastes. You feel the pull of the treats, the sticky residue on fingers, a small price for the rush, but the hidden aches remind you of the cost. Nobles mimic her enthusiasm, their smiles mirroring hers, even as jaws protest the overload. You picture a courtier discreetly rubbing his temple, blaming the wine instead of the marzipan. Light joke 3. If Catherine's dessert table were a party game, it'd be Sugar Rush Roulette, with losers waking to throbbing regrets. Your thoughts meander in the sweet-scented fog, the fans hum merging with the imagined murmurs of satisfaction. The pastries are the feast's finale, a crescendo of indulgence that leaves stomachs full and teeth tender. Catherine's smile the perfect curtain call. She savors a last bite of almond cake, her expression serene, the pain tucked away like a state secret. The hall feels warmer, the sugar's warmth seeping into your bones, a comforting embrace that blurs wakefulness. Her confections are more than food. They're a symbol of her reign, sweet on the surface, but with a bite that lingers. You relax, the banquet's glow fading into softness, ready to sip into the next ritual where spiced wine flows and secrets loosen. Section 8. You stay immersed in the Winter Palace banquet hall, the sugary remnants of pastries still lingering on plates. But now the focus turns to the gleaming decanters of spiced wine that servants pour with a flourish, the deep crimson liquid swirling in goblets and releasing tendrils of cinnamon and clove-scented steam that mask the bolder flavors beneath. The candlelight reflects off the wine's surface like stars in a night sky, but you sense how it loosens the court's guarded tongues. Conversations bubbling up as cheeks flush, and secrets slip. You lift a goblet, the warmth seeping through the crystal, wondering if you'd sip cautiously or let the mulled magic carry you away in this realm of royal revelry. The hall's atmosphere thickens, the wine's aroma weaving through the air like a subtle spell, drawing you into Catherine's ritual of liquid indulgence. The banquet evolves into its liquid phase, nobles cradling goblets as the spiced wine flows without end, a river of warmth that eases the weight of the meal. Catherine, who navigated alliances with European powers through savvy diplomacy, incorporated mulled wine into her feasts as a staple, a mainstream historical fact that saw her blending local kvass with imported vintages to create potent brews. You watch her raise her glass, the steam curling like incense, her sip deliberate and inviting others to follow. Servants mull the wine over low flames, stirring in honey, oranges, and a medley of spices that turn the drink into a fragrant elixir, its heat masking the bite of stronger spirits hidden within. A quirky tidbit from Envoy reports. Catherine once spiked her mulled wine with a dash of pepper to awaken the senses, leading to a night where courtiers confessed more than they intended. You grin at the mischief. Imagine a truth serum disguised as dessert wine. Light joke 1. If Catherine's mulled wine were bottled today, it'd come with a label warning. May cause loose lips and diplomatic disasters. You observe the courtiers, their goblets tilting as conversations spark, voices rising in a gentle hum that fills the hall. The wine's spices dance on your tongue in imagination. Cinnamon warming the throat, while clove adds a sharp edge that loosens inhibitions without warning. Nobles who were silent during the main courses now lean closer, sharing anecdotes or subtle barbs, their tongues freed by the mulled magic. You picture a lord recounting a hunt, his words slurring just enough to reveal a hidden grudge, while Catherine listens with a knowing smile. You chuckle at the scene, the wine acting like a court jester in liquid form. Light joke 2. If you overindulged in her spiced brew, you'd wake up with a headache and a list of accidental confessions longer than a Siberian winter. The aromatic haze envelops you, the soft gurgle of pours and the clink of toasts blending into a drowsy serenade. Historians still argue whether Catherine's promotion of mulled wine was a cultural nod to Russian traditions or a calculated ploy to extract unguarded truths from her circle during relaxed moments. Her feasts often extended late, the wine keeping guests pliable and talkative, alliances forged or frayed over refills. You notice a servant adding a twist of lemon to a fresh batch, the citrus cutting through the richness, but the spices dominate, masking any off notes from aged casks. The wine flows freely, decanters refilled before they're empty, ensuring no goblet sits idle. The steam rises like whispers, carrying hints of nutmeg and ginger that soothe and stimulate, pulling you into a relaxed fog where boundaries blur. As you sink deeper into the ritual, the palace's pulse slows like a winding clock, the conversations weaving patterns of intrigue and amusement. Catherine directs the flow, her goblet raised in toasts that command participation, her eyes sharp even as others soften. The mulled wine isn't just a drink, it's a facilitator, loosening tongues to reveal loyalties or lapses, a tool in her arsenal of control. You feel the warmth spreading, a comforting embrace that dulls the edges of wakefulness. Nobles lean back, their words flowing like the wine itself, stories of travels or triumphs spilling out under the spiced influence. You imagine a diplomat letting slip a secret, blaming the clove for his candor. Light joke 3. If Catherine's wine were a therapist, it'd charge by the goblet and specialize in overshare sessions. Your thoughts meander in the fragrant mist, the fans hum echoing the soft murmurs around the table. The spices create a veil, masking not just flavors, but intentions, allowing the court to unwind while Catherine observes. Her rituals keep the wine central, a bridge between courses and confidences, its flow as endless as her ambition. You relax, the hall's glow dimming into softness, the mulled warmth seeping into your core. Conversations rise and fall, tongues loosened, but never fully unleashed, a delicate balance she maintains with every pour. The banquet feels eternal now, the wine's magic holding time in suspension. You drift, ready to uncover the politics simmering beneath the surface, where seating and dishes become weapons in her grand game. Section 9. You continue to linger in the Winter Palace banquet hall, the spiced wine's warmth still buzzing in the air. But now your gaze sharpens on the intricate web of seating arrangements and dish distributions that Catherine orchestrates like a master puppeteer, rewarding loyal courtiers with prime spots and choice morsels, while subtly snubbing rivals with distant chairs and lesser fare. The candlelight illuminates the table's hierarchy, shadows playing across faces that mask ambition behind polite smiles. But you sense the undercurrent of tension, each placement a silent declaration of favor or frost. You shift in your imagined seat, wondering if you'd angle for a spot near the Empress or wisely accept a corner to avoid her scrutiny. The hall's murmurs rise, the clink of goblets underscoring the power plays unfolding over plates and positions. The banquet table is a battlefield disguised as a buffet, where Catherine wields seating charts and serving trays like weapons in her arsenal of control. Catherine, who outmaneuvered rivals to maintain her throne through strategic marriages and alliances, used her feasts to mirror her political maneuvers, a mainstream historical fact that saw her demoting disloyal nobles by assigning them seats far from her view. You watch as a favored advisor is ushered to her right, his plate heaped with caviar and tender venison, while a scheming countess finds herself at the table's end, staring at a bowl of plain kasha. Servants deliver dishes with pointed precision, a succulent roast for allies, a meager portion of bread for those on thin ice. A quirky tidbit from court chronicles. Catherine once accidentally served a rival a dish laced with extra salt, claiming it symbolized his overreaching thirst for power. You grin at the subtle shade. Imagine salting someone's food as a regal roast. Light joke 1. If Catherine's seating was a dating app, swiping left would land you next to the kitchen door with a side of humble pie. You observe the courtiers settling in, their expressions a mix of relief and resentment as they gauge their proximity to the Empress. A close seat means influence, a chance to whisper suggestions or catch her ear over wine, while banishment to the fringes signals demotion. Conversations limited to small talk with lesser lords. You imagine the pre-feast scramble, nobles bribing servants for better spots, their schemes as layered as the pastries. Catherine surveys it all, her smile benign, but her eyes calculating, using the table to reinforce her web of loyalties. You chuckle at a noble adjusting his chair closer, only to be redirected by a stern footman. Light joke 2. If you tried scooting your seat nearer to Catherine, you'd probably end up dining with the dogs under the table. The atmosphere thickens with intrigue. The soft rustle of silk and the faint scrape of chairs blending into a drowsy intrigue. Historians still argue whether Catherine's use of feast politics was a calculated extension of her absolutist rule or an intuitive response to the constant threats from her scheming entourage. Her tables became arenas where alliances shifted with every course, a favored dish sealing a pact, a snub sparking quiet vendettas. You notice a young upstart beaming as he receives a slice of her prized honey cake, while an older rival pokes at overcooked fish, his face a mask of forced gratitude. The power plays unfold subtly, conversations laced with double meanings, the wine loosening tongues just enough to reveal cracks in facades. The hall's glow feels conspiratorial, candle flames flickering like winking accomplices, pulling you into a relaxed web where every gesture matters. As you immerse deeper, the palace's intrigue soothes like a whispered secret, the murmurs weaving patterns of ambition and allegiance. Catherine directs the game with ease, her nods deciding who gets the choicest cut or the exotic fruit, her snubs delivered through absent servings that speak volumes. You feel the tensions pull, the way a prime seat elevates status, a distant one diminishes it, all without a word of reprimand. Nobles navigate this minefield, their smiles fixed, schemes simmering beneath the surface. You picture a courtier buttering up a servant for intel on tomorrow's chart, coins changing hands in shadows. Light joke 3. If Catherine's feasts were office politics, the water cooler would be spiked with arsenic, and the corner desk would come with a view of Siberia. Your thoughts drift in the candlelit mist, the fans hum echoing the soft sighs of resignation around the table. The dishes become tools, seating a strategy, the entire meal a microcosm of her empire, where reward and punishment blend seamlessly. You sense the exhaustion in the air, the constant vigilance wearing on even the most ambitious. But Catherine thrives in it, her position at the head unassailable. The power plays are endless, a dance of favor and fallout that keeps the court on edge. You relax, the hall's warmth fading into comfort, the intrigue lulling you towards slumber. Her scheming courtiers play their parts, but she holds the strings, turning every feast into a lesson in loyalty. You sink, ready to encounter the shocks awaiting foreign guests at this unpredictable table. Section 10. You remain ensconced in the Winter Palace banquet hall, the political undercurrents of seating and servings still rippling through the air. But now your attention turns to the wide-eyed foreign envoys scattered among the courtiers, their faces a mix of diplomatic politeness and barely concealed shock as they confront Catherine's array of strange Russian flavors that assault their refined palates. The candlelight highlights their hesitant forks, paused over bowls of fermented cabbage or slabs of salted fish. But you sense the cultural clash brewing, each bite a test of their composure in this unfamiliar gastronomic arena. You watch an ambassador from France gingerly prod a piece of sturgeon, his expression shifting from curiosity to quiet horror, wondering if you'd fare better or join the ranks of the bewildered. The hall's warmth deepens, the sense of unfamiliar spices pulling you into the Empress's world, where diplomacy meets dinner with unpredictable results. The banquet table becomes a stage for international intrigue, where visiting envoys from across Europe navigate Catherine's menu like a minefield of tastes they never anticipated. Catherine, who forged alliances through correspondence with figures like Frederick the Great, used her feasts to showcase Russian uniqueness, a mainstream historical fact that often left foreigners flustered amid the bold, unfamiliar dishes. You observe a Prussian diplomat choking back a spoonful of okroshka, a cold soup of kvass and vegetables that hits like a tangy surprise, his cough masked by a hasty sip of wine. Servants offer seconds with innocent smiles, but the envoys' plates remain half-touched, their stomachs rebelling against the fermented and pickled staples. A quirky tidbit from diplomatic dispatches. One Swedish envoy reportedly mistook a bowl of pelmeni dumplings for exotic pasta, only to find them stuffed with bear meat, leading to a night of regretful indigestion. You smile at the mishap. Imagine scribbling a frantic letter home about the barbaric delights. Light joke 1. If Catherine's table was an international summit, the real negotiations would happen in the privy afterward. You note the envoy's subtle discomfort. A Venetian ambassador, poking at a slice of black bread slathered with smetana, his face paling as the sour cream's richness overwhelms his Mediterranean sensibilities. The strange flavors, from herring in fur coats layered with beets and mayonnaise to sweet blini topped with caviar, catch them off guard, their forks hovering indecisively. You picture their pre-arrival briefings, warnings about politics, but none about the palate punches waiting in the Winter Palace. Courtiers watch with amusement, their familiarity a quiet advantage in this culinary diplomacy. You chuckle at an English visitor's wide eyes fixed on a dish of collardettes, jellied meat that wobbles like a dubious dessert. Light joke 2. If you were an envoy tasting her fermented mare's milk, you'd probably claim diplomatic immunity from seconds. The cultural friction adds a layer to the hall's ambience, the soft gasps and polite compliments blending into a drowsy undercurrent. Historians still argue whether Catherine's insistence on serving authentic Russian flavors to foreigners was a proud display of national identity or a deliberate tactic to unsettle them and gain negotiating edges. Her table forced adaptation, envoys choking down bites while discussing treaties, their discomfort a subtle power shift in her favor. You see a French attaché force a smile over a forkful of shchi, cabbage soup simmered for hours, its earthy depth clashing with his love for lighter bisques. The strange tastes linger, pickled mushrooms and smoked eel offering no mercy. The envoy's preparations for pomp, but not for the plate proving woefully inadequate. The wine helps, its spice masking some shocks, but the flavors persist, pulling you into a relaxed haze where surprise meets satiation. As you absorb the scene, the palace's vibe eases like a shared secret, the envoy's reactions weaving humor into the grandeur. Catherine observes with a twinkle, her menu a tool to humanize or humble, turning potential adversaries into fellow diners bonded by bewilderment. You feel the warmth of the hall, the sense of fermentation and smoke creating a comforting fog that blurs boundaries. Envoys adapt or feign it, their chokes turning to chuckles, diplomacy flavored by the unexpected. You imagine a Spanish visitor later journaling about the wild Russian banquet, exaggerating the bear meat for dramatic effect. Light joke 3. If Catherine's feasts were a blind date, foreigners would swipe left after the first fermented bite. Your mind wanders in the candlelit glow, the fans hum mirroring the soft sighs of resignation from the guests. The strange flavors aren't just food. They're a statement. Unprepared envoys learning Russia's depth, one shocking spoonful at a time. Catherine's table bridges worlds, but often leaves outsiders adrift, their palates the first casualty in her subtle games. You relax, the hall's energy fading into softness, the shocks of taste lulling you toward acceptance. Her feasts challenge and charm, a culinary welcome that tests resolve. You drift, ready to uncover the excess of waste that follows these lavish spreads, where leftovers tell tales of indulgence unchecked. Section 11. You persist in the Winter Palace banquet hall, the foreign envoy's shock still echoing in subdued murmurs. But now your eyes widen at the mounting piles of uneaten food on side tables and trays, leftovers from the lavish spread that reveal the palace's indulgent habits teetering into outright waste. The candlelight casts a forgiving glow over half-touched platters of roasted fowl and congealing soups. But you sense the excess spilling over, servants discreetly carting away mounds of untouched delicacies that could feed villages. You glance at your plate, barely dented despite the abundance, wondering if you'd sneak a morsel home or let it join the forgotten feast in this world of royal surplus. The hall's opulence dims slightly, the sense of cooling meats and fruits turning cloying, drawing you into Catherine's realm, where bounty borders on burden. The banquet's aftermath unfolds like a silent confession, tables groaning under the weight of discarded dishes that servants stack with practiced efficiency. Catherine, who amassed vast wealth through territorial expansions like the partitions of Poland, presided over feasts where waste was as grand as the servings, a mainstream historical fact that saw tons of food prepared only to be partially consumed in displays of power. You watch as a tray of barely nibbled pastries is whisked away, their sugary tops still pristine, while half a haunch of venison cools untouched, its juices pooling on the platter. The leftovers pile high in alcoves, breads and fruits mingling in haphazard towers that servants sought for repurposing or disposal. A quirky tidbit from kitchen inventories. Catherine's court once discarded enough uneaten caviar in a single week to fill a small boat, some salvaged for staff, but much lost to spoilage. You muse at the extravagance. Imagine fishing with luxury bait. Light joke 1. If Catherine's leftovers were a startup, it'd be called royal compost. Turning excess into exclusive fertilizer. You scan the hall, noting nobles pushing away plates still laden with delicacies, their appetites sated long before the course's end. The waste is systematic, feasts designed to overwhelm rather than satisfy, ensuring no guest leaves hungry, but many dishes leave untouched. Servants navigate the piles, their arms full of congealing stews and wilted salads, the air heavy with the fading warmth of what was once a symphony of flavors. You imagine the scale, kitchens churning out multiples of every dish to account for whims, only for much to return uneaten. You chuckle at a courtier absent-mindedly toying with an untouched pear, letting it roll off the table to join the floor's casualties. Light joke 2. If you tried saving leftovers in doggy bags, Catherine might accuse you of plotting a peasant uprising with portable picnics. The excess creates a melancholic haze, the soft shuffle of servants and the drip of sauces blending into a drowsy lament. Historians still argue whether Catherine's wasteful dining was a deliberate symbol of imperial plenty or an unintended byproduct of her court's rigid protocols that discouraged overeating. Her feasts, meant to impress, often resulted in mountains of scraps fed to animals or composted in palace gardens, a cycle of indulgence that mirrored Russia's vast but uneven resources. You notice a stack of discarded blini, their caviar topping smeared, servants scraping what they can for reuse while the rest head to the bins. The piles grow, fruits bruising in heaps, meats drying out, the waste a quiet counterpoint to the earlier splendor. The hall feels fuller, yet emptier, the abundance turning burdensome, pulling you into a relaxed reflection where plenty meets pointlessness. As you absorb the scene, the palace's rhythm slows like a satiated sigh, the murmurs fading as servants clear the remnants. Catherine overlooks it with detachment, her focus on conversations rather than conservation. The waste a byproduct of her vision for a dazzling court. You feel the weight of it, the uneaten abundance speaking to privilege unchecked, nobles too refined to finish, but too proud to forgo. Staff salvage what they can, soups reheated for tomorrow, breads turned to crumbs for birds, but much is lost, a hidden cost of her reign. You picture villagers gazing at the palace, unaware of the feasts fueling the fires or filling the grounds. Light joke 3. If Catherine's waste were recycled today, it'd launch a zero-waste movement sponsored by Empress Excess Enterprises. Your thoughts wander in the candlelit dim, the fans hum echoing the soft sighs of overfed guests. The leftovers tell tales of indulgence, piles revealing a court where showing restraint meant showing weakness. Catherine's habits set the tone, her plates cleared partially, the excess a statement of inexhaustible supply. You sense the servants' quiet resentment, their hands sorting the bounty they rarely taste, the waste a stark divide between table and toil. The hall clears gradually, the piles diminishing, but the memory lingering, a drowsy reminder of abundance's shadow. You relax, the warmth of the room fading into comfort, the indulgent echoes pulling you towards slumber. Her palace thrives on this cycle, waste woven into the fabric of feasts unchecked. You drift, ready to delve into the whispers of poison fears that flavor every grand banquet with paranoia. Section 12. You dwell deeper in the Winter Palace banquet hall, the echoes of poison whispers still hanging in the air like unseen veils. But now your gaze falls on the expansive tablecloths draped across the long tables, their embroidered linens shimmering under the candlelight with intricate patterns of golden threads that weave tales of eagles, crowns, and blooming roses, each stitch a silent testament to power plays etched into fabric. The material flows like a river of silk and damask, heavy with symbolism that dazzles the eye but conceals layers of intrigue, from hidden messages in the designs to the subtle hierarchies they represent. You trace a finger along the edge in your mind, feeling the raised embroidery, wondering if you'd unravel a secret or just snag a thread in this tapestry of royal subtlety. The hall's ambience softens further, the linens glow, pulling you into Catherine's world, where even the cloth beneath the plates serves as a stage for ambition. The tablecloths unfold like canvases of coded history, their elaborate embroideries capturing the essence of Catherine's reign in every motif. Catherine, who commissioned vast artistic projects, including the expansion of the Hermitage Museum, extended her patronage to these linens, a mainstream historical fact that saw her importing master weavers from France and Italy to craft pieces that blended Russian folklore with European elegance. You admire the intricate borders, lions rampant guarding floral borders that symbolize her conquests, each thread meticulously placed to evoke strength and fertility. Servants smooth them with care, ensuring no wrinkle mars the display. But beneath the surface, the fabrics hold stories of favor and fallout. A quirky tidbit from artisan records. Catherine once had a tablecloth embroidered with a hidden map of her territorial gains, visible only under specific candle angles, used to subtly remind guests of her expanding empire during tense dinners. You muse at the cleverness. Imagine dining on a secret strategy guide. Light joke 1. If Catherine's linens were modern tech, they'd be smart fabrics that buzzed when detecting a disloyal fork. You scan the expanse, noting how the central cloth under Catherine's place features the boldest designs. Eagles with outstretched wings that seem to soar over the table, while peripheral sections fade into simpler patterns for lesser nobles. The embroidery dazzles, gold and silver threads catching the light like stars, but each stitch hides labor and law, weavers encoding personal touches or royal directives into the weave. You imagine the hours poured into these, needles flashing in distant workshops, the final product a blend of art and agenda. Nobles glance at the motifs near their plates, interpreting them as omens of status, a rose for rising favor or a thorn for warning. You chuckle at a courtier squinting at his section, perhaps seeing a wilting flower as a bad sign. Light joke 2. If you spilled wine on her symbolic cloth, it'd be less an accident and more a declaration of war on the weave. The linen's allure creates a mesmerizing veil, the soft rustle as servants adjust them, blending into a drowsy whisper. Historians still argue whether Catherine's embroidered tablecloths were purely decorative expressions of her cultural enlightenment or deliberate instruments of psychological influence, embedding subliminal messages to reinforce her authority during communal gatherings. Her designs often incorporated personal emblems, like the bee for industry or the phoenix for rebirth, each thread a narrative strand in her story of transformation from foreign princess to Russian icon. You notice the way light plays on the threads, revealing hidden depths, the fabrics heavy with dyes from exotic imports that add vibrancy, but also weight. The embroidery captivates, patterns swirling in hypnotic loops, pulling you into a relaxed trance where history feels tangible, touchable. As you immerse in the detail, the palace's aura eases like a gentle unfurling, the conversations around the table weaving through the linen's silent tales. Catherine presides over it all, her hand occasionally brushing the cloth, perhaps tracing a crown that mirrors her ambitions. The threads hide stories of power plays, weavers sometimes slipping in subtle protests or praises, detected only by the keen-eyed. You feel the texture in your mind, the raised stitches like braille for the ambitious, each one a chapter in her reign's visual chronicle. Nobles interpret the designs personally, a favorably placed motif boosting morale, a stark one sowing doubt. You picture a rival staring at a shadowed eagle, wondering if it's a sign of an eclipse. Light joke 3. If Catherine's tablecloths were fortune cookies, the messages would read, "Your future is threaded with intrigue and a side of soup stains. Your thoughts meander in the candlelit weave. The fans hum echoing the soft sighs over the fabric's beauty. The linens aren't mere backdrops, they're participants, absorbing spills and secrets. Their embroidery a language of legacy that speaks without words." Catherine's patronage elevated them to art, each piece a power play in cloth form, dazzling guests while delineating divides. You sense the labor behind them, hands aching from endless stitching. The final dazzle, a triumph of tenacity. The hall feels enveloped in their glow, the threads pulling you toward slumber's embrace. Her symbolic linens endure, stories hidden in every fold, a testament to a reign where even the table is dressed for dominance. You relax, the patterns blurring into softness, ready to confront the modern laughs that echo back at these historical quirks. Section 13. You linger in the Winter Palace banquet hall, the paranoia of poison tasters fading like a distant murmur. But now your gaze settles on the sprawling tablecloths draped across the tables, their embroidered threads gleaming under candlelight, with patterns of soaring eagles and blooming roses that whisper tales of power and ambition. The linens cascade like silken rivers, heavy with gold and silver stitching that dazzle the eye. But you sense the hidden stories woven into each design, from secret messages to subtle hierarchies that shape the court's dynamics. You trace the intricate borders in your mind, feeling the raised embroidery, wondering if you'd catch a coded hint or simply marvel at the artistry in this world of textile politics. The hall's glow softens, the scents of cooling dishes mingling with the linen's faint musk, pulling you into Catherine's realm, where even the cloth beneath the plates plays a regal role. These tablecloths are more than mere fabric. They are tapestries of influence, each stitch a deliberate stroke in the canvas of Catherine's rule. Catherine, who founded schools and expanded the arts as part of her enlightened despotism, commissioned these linens to reflect her empire's grandeur, a mainstream historical fact that saw master weavers crafting pieces that blended Russian folklore with European sophistication. You admire the central cloth under her seat, its bold phoenix motif rising from flames, symbolizing her transformative reign from German princess to Russian icon. The embroidery sparkles, threads catching the candlelight like stars. But each pattern tells a story, from conquest to courtly favor, a quirky tidbit from weavers' records. One tablecloth featured a hidden cipher in its floral border, spelling out a loyal noble's name, revealed only to those who knew to tilt their head at dusk's light. You muse at the secrecy. Imagine dining on a coded crossword. Light joke 1. If Catherine's linens were modern apps, they'd need a password to unlock the secret loyalty settings. You scan the table, noting how the designs shift from opulent at the center to simpler at the edges, mirroring the court's pecking order. Nobles seated near Catherine bask in intricate patterns of lions and crowns, while those at the fringes face plainer weaves, their status subtly diminished. The linens absorb the banquet's chaos, wine stains and crumbs blending into the threads. Yet their beauty endures, a testament to the artisan's skill. You imagine the weavers, hands calloused from months of stitching, embedding personal flourishes or sly protests into the patterns. unnoticed by all but the sharpest eyes. A courtier peers at his section, perhaps seeing a thorned rose as a warning, his smile faltering. You chuckle at his unease, picturing him decoding the cloth like a nervous fortune teller. Light joke too. If you spilled gravy on her prized embroidery, you'd be sewing apologies into the next banquet's cloth. The linen's grandeur weaves a hypnotic spell, the soft rustle as servants smooth them blending into a drowsy hum. Historians still argue whether Catherine's embroidered tablecloths were artistic indulgences to rival European courts or strategic tools to encode messages and reinforce her authority during feasts. Her designs, often featuring bees for industry or double-headed eagles for dominion, served as visual propaganda, reminding guests of her expansive reach. You notice a corner where the stitching depicts a river, perhaps the Neva, its curves mirroring that quirky ciphered cloth, a nod to her territorial victories. The fabrics carry weight, dyed with costly pigments from distant trade routes, their richness a silent boast of Russia's wealth. The hall feels alive with their stories, the candle flames dancing like accomplices, pulling you into a relaxed trance where every thread pulses with meaning. As you delve deeper, the palace's rhythm soothes like a whispered tale, the linen's patterns weaving a narrative of power and pride. Catherine's touch on the cloth is rare but deliberate, her fingers brushing a crown motif as if affirming her legacy. You feel the texture in your mind, the embroidery a tactile map of her reign, each stitch a chapter of triumph or caution. Nobles interpret the designs personally, a vibrant motif boosting ambition, a stark one sowing doubt. You picture a rival staring at a shadowed eagle, wondering if it signals his fall. Light joke 3. If Catherine's tablecloths were social media, they'd be curated posts with hashtags like Imperial Vibes and Watch Your Step. Your thoughts drift in the candlelit weave, the fans hum echoing the soft sighs of awe over the fabric's beauty. The linens aren't mere decor. They're players in the banquet's drama, absorbing spills and secrets, their embroidery a language of legacy that speaks without words. Catherine's patronage elevated them to art, each piece a power play, dazzling guests while delineating divides. You sense the labor behind them, weavers' hands aching to craft her vision, the final dazzle a triumph of tenacity. The hall's warmth fades into comfort, the threads lulling you towards slumber. Her symbolic linens endure, stories hidden in every fold, ready to spark modern laughs at these intricate quirks. Section 14. You sit deeper in the Winter Palace banquet hall, the embroidered tablecloths, intricate tales still shimmering in your mind. But now your thoughts shift to the modern world, where Catherine's lavish feasts spark laughter and memes across screens. Her dining quirks reimagined as chaotic buffets that would leave today's foodies baffled. The candlelight fades into the glow of imagined smartphones, the hall's opulence replaced by viral posts poking fun at bare meat platters and endless soup courses. Yet you sense a strange respect beneath the humor, her legacy enduring through digital jests. You picture scrolling through a feed, chuckling at comparisons to overstuffed potlucks, wondering if you join the online roast or defend her culinary chaos. The scents of spices linger faintly, blending with the hall's fading warmth, pulling you into a drowsy bridge between her era and ours, where history's quirks become internet fodder. The banquet's grandeur takes on a new life in today's world, where Catherine's feasts are dissected with a mix of awe and amusement, her tables transformed into punchlines for TikTok historians and Reddit threads. Catherine, who ruled Russia until 1796 and left a legacy of cultural reforms, becomes a meme magnet for her dining excesses, a mainstream historical fact that sees her feasts compared to modern, all-you-can-eat disasters gone viral. You imagine a video captioned, "Catherine's Buffet Blunders," zooming in on a plate of jellied elk tongue with a dramatic voiceover questioning her taste, a quirky tidbit from contemporary blogs. One influencer claimed her 12-fish soup could inspire a reality show called Extreme Broth, with contestants racing to identify the seafood before passing out. You grin at the thought. Imagine Gordon Ramsay losing it over her sturgeon overload. Light joke 1. If Catherine's feasts were a TikTok trend, they'd be #RoyalBuffetFail, with millions of likes for the chaos alone. You envision the online chatter, posts mocking the waste of caviar boats and the formality of chewing 32 times, yet some defend her, arguing her menus united an empire's flavors. The internet revels in her oddities, from ostrich eggs to fermented mare's milk, turning her dining hall into a virtual carnival of "what even is this?" reactions. You picture a meme of her golden spoon captioned, "When your soup needs a crown," shared across platforms with laughing emojis. The humor softens the absurdity, making her human, her excesses relatable to anyone who's over-ordered at a buffet. You chuckle at a hypothetical tweet. "Catherine's feasts make my holiday potluck look minimalist." Light joke 2. If you posted about her bear meat stew, the comments would be "hard pass" or "needs more ketchup." The digital haze wraps you in a cozy glow, the imagined clicks and scrolls blending with the fan's hum into a soothing rhythm. Historians still argue whether Catherine's dining legacy, now meme fodder, overshadows her enlightened reforms or amplifies her larger-than-life persona in modern eyes. Her feasts, once diplomatic stages, are now comedic gold. Videos exaggerating the piles of leftovers or the envoys' shocked faces as they tackled collardettes. You see a YouTube short looping a reenactment of a taster choking on pepper-spiked wine. The comments filled with same from viewers who've braved weird food combos. The humor bridges centuries, her quirks resonating with today's love for over-the-top culinary tales, pulling you into a relaxed trance where history meets hilarity. As you drift in this virtual banquet, the palace's echoes soften like a fading post, the laughter weaving a thread between her time and ours. Catherine's feasts live on, not just in textbooks, but in gifs of nobles fumbling with marrow scoops, their formality mocked but admired for its audacity. You feel the connection, the way her tables mirror modern excess, from viral food challenges to overstuffed fridges. The internet doesn't just laugh, it marvels. Her ability to dazzle with food enduring through pixelated jests. You picture a subreddit dedicated to her menus, users debating if her honey cakes were worth the toothaches. Light joke 3. If Catherine's dining went viral, her hashtag would be Empress Eats, trending with who invited the bear meat. Your mind wanders in the digital glow, the fan's hum echoing the soft buzz of notifications. The memes don't diminish her. They immortalize her quirks, turning feasts into folklore for a new age. You sense the warmth, the way laughter preserves her legacy, making her less a distant monarch and more a relatable icon of indulgence. The hall's opulence fades, replaced by screens that keep her story alive, each chuckle a nod to her enduring flair. You relax, the virtual laughter lulling you towards slumber, the banquet's glow now a pixelated shimmer. Her feasts bridge time, their absurdity a comfort that invites rest. You sink, ready to drift into the final act, where her dining legacy fades into quiet reverence. Section 15. You reside in the Winter Palace banquet hall, the modern meme's playful echoes dissolving like sugar in tea. But now your perspective widens to the banquet's gradual fade as Catherine's advancing years cast a softer veil over her once boisterous table, the feasts becoming more intimate with fewer courtiers and restrained dishes that echo her diminishing vitality, yet preserve her indelible mark on dining lore. The candlelight wanes to a tender glimmer, illuminating a smaller gathering where the Empress holds court with quiet authority, her presence a steady anchor amid the evolving simplicity. You observe the subdued spread, the bare meat and exotic fruits yielding to lighter fares like herbal teas and modest pies, pondering if you'd cherish this evolution or yearn for the earlier extravagance in her twilight era. The hall's ambiance mellows into serenity, the faint clinks and murmurs guiding you toward a peaceful closure where her legacy simmers gently. The table in Catherine's later phase reflects a seasoned sovereign, the opulent banquets of her prime tempered by time into gatherings that prioritize reflection over revelry. Catherine, who authored her memoirs to shape her historical image before she died in 1796 as a mainstream historical fact, saw her dining evolve into calmer affairs, her table a mirror to her legacy of cultural fusion and control. You envision her selecting a simple blini, its topping modest caviar, her chew thoughtful as she shares anecdotes with a select circle, the court's energy hushed but heartfelt. The quieter feasts retain her essence, spiced wines mulled milder, pastries fewer but cherished, her influence lingering in every shared story, a quirky tidbit from her aide's notes. In her final months, Catherine requested a single rose petal floated in her tea, symbolizing the bloom of a fulfilled reign, a poetic nod to her earlier floral embroidered linens. You reflect on the grace. Imagine ending feasts with a petal instead of a platter. Light joke 1. If Catherine's aging menus were a retirement plan, they'd include legacy lounging with optional naps between courses. You note the reduced circle, loyal nobles clustered closer, their conversations delving into reminiscences rather than rivalries. The tablecloth's patterns now evoking nostalgia for past power plays. The feasts grow quieter, the hall's vastness feeling cozier. Catherine's voice, a soothing thread, weaving through the diminished din. You chuckle at an elder courtier, savoring a last honey cake, his tales of youthful excesses drawing smiles from the group. Light joke 2. If you attended her twilight dinners, you'd finally hear yourself think over the lack of orchestral fanfare. The banquet's hush deepens into a profound calm, the soft exchanges and occasional laughter blending into a drowsy harmony. Historians still argue whether Catherine's quieter tables in her waning years were a concession to frailty or a deliberate curation of her myth as a wise matriarch, fostering intellectual bonds. Her legacy lingers, The dining rituals a lasting imprint, feasts remembered for their evolution from bold statements to intimate testaments. You see her raise a goblet in a gentle toast, the wine's spice a faint echo of earlier vigor, her smile enduring as the court absorbs her wisdom. The hall empties slowly, the linens folded with care, their threads carrying forward the stories of a reign well savored. The quieter glow comforts, pulling you into a serene haze where her influence persists beyond the plates. As you immerse in this finale, the palace's pulse eases like a contented sigh, the conversations winding to whispers of gratitude. Catherine's dining legacy endures, a blend of excess and elegance that flavored an empire. Her table, a symbol of her transformative rule. You feel the peace settling, the warmth of shared meals transcending time. Her feasts a bridge to history's quieter corners. Nobles depart with bows, their steps light, the memory of her presence a gentle sustenance. You picture her alone, a final sip, the hall's silence a fitting ovation. Light joke 3. If Catherine's legacy were a dessert, it'd be a timeless cake, forever fresh in the oven of anecdote. Your mind wanders in the dimming light, the fans hum echoing the soft breaths of a court at rest. The quieter table doesn't diminish her, it distills her essence, flavors refined, legacy savored. You sense the calm, the feast's evolution, and a gentle close to her story, where indulgence gives way to introspection. The hall hushes completely, the glow a faint ember, lulling you towards slumber's embrace. Her dining legacy endures, a feast for history's palate, sweet and satisfying in its maturity. You relax, the patterns of her life blurring into softness, ready to let the script wind down into dreams. As the banquet's final embers fade, you feel the palace settling into a profound quiet, the embroidered linens draped like gentle shrouds over the now empty tables. Catherine's presence lingers, a soft echo in the hall's vastness. Her feasts remembered not for their scale, but for the warmth they kindled in hearts and hearths. You drift further, the sense of spices dissolving into memory, the candlelight yielding to starry dreams. Let the weight of history ease from your mind, each breath slower, deeper, carrying you toward rest. The Winter Palace sleeps now, its stories tucked away like folded napkins, waiting for dawn's gentle unfold. Close your eyes, let the fans hum be your lullaby, and surrender to the night's embrace. Sweet dreams, traveler. May your slumber be as peaceful as a queen's final repose.